Paranormal After Dark with the Roadie on Rocket FM.
And we're back here on Paranormal After Dark for another week, and I've got three learned gentlemen with me again. We're going to talk Poltergeists this week. Peter Hassall, Sam Collier, and Mark Wallbank. Hi, guys.
Hi. Hello. Hi.
Alrighty, so Poltergeists. I don't know too much about it, but people have said to me, you need to do a show on Poltergeists. So go around the three of you for a little bit. What do you think? You know, people, we've seen the movies, we've seen the TV shows, we've seen all the stuff, you know, what Poltergeists allegedly are, but what do you guys think they are? Mark?
I have no idea. Absolutely no idea. Poltergeist, for me personally, it's the big topic, the big subject that appeals to me most in this whole sort of ghosts and hauntings field of research. So Poltergeist is something that I've always been fascinated in, always wanted to experience, but not sure if I have. There have been moments where things have moved, but my big question is, I mean, when things move around the house due to alleged hauntings, is that the same as a poltergeist event? Or is a poltergeist event something completely different? I don't really know. I don't know if I've experienced a poltergeist. There was, Sam will know this, there was the torch throwing incident at Puanui Homestead in the Hawick Historical Village. Now, that's one I've always pondered on. Was that a poltergeist event, or was that something else? Would that be a ghost event or a poltergeist event? Are they the same thing, or are they something completely different? I don't know.
Peter, your thoughts? Yeah. What do you think, Peter?
Yeah, I don't know what they are either. I've sort of, in preparation for this, dug through my files, and that's both physical files from old newspaper archive research and also online soft copy stuff, and a few books that I have on poltergeists. And I think essentially it's probably the second most complex mystery after UFOs. And I think, to Mark's point, sometimes there's a grey area between a haunting and a poltergeist case, because sometimes shadows or figures are seen during poltergeist cases, and sometimes during normal sort of ghost stuff there can be noises and things as well, and objects moving around. I think some of the main poltergeist things, different types of things like flows of liquids from the ceilings and walls, fires spontaneously breaking out everywhere, there are banging and noises and so forth, which comes the name noisy ghost, poltergeist in German, I believe. And the classic one, which I'm most interested in, which is falls of stones, and occasionally bricks and bottles, etc., for days or weeks or even months or years onto one property. Now, we call all those sorts of things poltergeists, whatever a poltergeist is, but are all those things caused in the same way, perhaps?
Sam, what do you reckon? Have you got an opinion on what you think they might be, or are you pretty much the same as the other guys?
I'm also camp, I don't know. But I share the same sentiment as Mark and Peter as well. And actually it wasn't until Mark mentioned the torch, I would have said that I haven't necessarily experienced anything that would have been remotely related to any sort of poltergeist activity, but it just reminded me of an experience we had at an old school where a set of keys materialized out of nowhere. So, I mean, that sort of fits in with similar poltergeist activity where objects seem to appear out of nowhere.
So is that for real? They actually appeared out of nowhere?
They actually appeared, well, we don't know where they came from, let's be honest, but we know that they weren't there before. And we both heard the sound of the keys fall as if they were thrown or dropped or came out of nowhere. Very distinctive sound. And we have no idea. We've been going through that doorway all night and they were not there at all.
See, I have it in reverse around my home, and this is weird. Things actually disappear, and you turn the house over, and then weeks later they appear somewhere else in the house. And of course the kids will say they didn't move it, the wife says they didn't move it, I know I didn't move it. Now, is that poltergeist activity?
That's called age.
I've been doing it for 25 years. Anyway, so you see, we're coming at it from a more sort of, I guess, practical look at it. But let's talk about some of these more famous cases, like the Enfield case, that people still, if you go online, still believe that stuff. I mean, what was going on there? It was pretty much debunked, wasn't it?
I don't think so. I think certain elements were. But, I mean, I've been researching that one for a long time myself, and I have all the books, and I've watched all the lectures and all the interviews and things like that. And, yeah, there are certain things that could have been faked, and there were a few moments that the girls did actually play up for the cameras and all that. But I think my gut feeling tells me that if you've got experienced researchers in the house that are actually there monitoring everything with cameras, physically in the room with the girls at the time, and things are happening. I mean, those researchers, if they're doing their job well, they will be looking out for all the red flags. They'll be looking for the wires. They'll be looking, and they will note if somebody is pranking them by flipping something over or throwing something or whatever. I know as a researcher and investigator myself, and Sam would be the same. When we go to investigation, we're actually looking at each other. We're actually looking at the other team members. We're looking around the room. We're actually monitoring our surroundings and each other as well. Because when something happens, we want to know where everybody was in the room, what everybody was doing. And I just don't believe that a researcher as renowned and as respected as Guy Playfair and the others would actually be that sloppy in their research. I just don't think it could happen, especially if they're in the room with those girls.
Maybe they were the Zach Bagans of their time. I don't know, but some of those cases, you're right. Some of the stuff looks faked, and then you go, "Oh, well, that's legit." But I think the problem with it, my view, is when you get a case like that where the girls admit to faking something or playing up to the camera, then it casts the whole doubt on everything.
Oh, but you got to remember they are just kids, and they have cameras, and there's people showing an interest in them. So kids will fight for attention and do what they can, and they will tend to take something that was already quite interesting and try and ramp it up a bit to make it even more interesting, so they get more airtime and more attention. I don't really know about that. I think it's fascinating. I think the whole voice thing. I've listened to the recordings and the length of those recordings of them speaking, of her speaking like that, and it does seem quite unbelievable that they would just be hoaxing grown-ups like that continually, daily, and pulling the wool over everybody's eyes like that. I just don't believe it.
Okay, what do you guys think, Peter and Sam? I mean, it's I'm a bit sceptical.
No, I know what you're saying, and I definitely do agree with Mark. I mean, there are often in a famous case like that, there are claims and counterclaims, and I do believe that both in this field and others, UFOs and things, you can get some skeptics who they will decide this is what's happening, and then they will try and make everything fit that. It's the old full class for classic UFO skeptic. He would really distort the facts of cases to make an explanation fit. I also think sometimes if activity ceases when investigators are there, children may perhaps try and make something happen so that people aren't disappointed. But there are many, many poltergeist cases where what's happened simply could not have been done by children or even adults, just not possible. And lastly, children are quite often put under pressure, psychological and sometimes even physical, by investigators or skeptics or police and so forth to confess. So I would say there are some false confessions out there in some of these cases.
You also have to look at the two police officers that were in the room and the couch flipped over. That their whole couch just flipped over, and they were there. They witnessed the whole thing. I find that quite fascinating. I mean, unless the police officers are lying as well, or part of it, I don't know. It just they found no signs of tampering with the couch.
Do we think it's I was listening to an old Art Bell show the other week. I can't remember who the guy was he was talking to, but this guy was talking about it being how a lot of it appears to be around teenage girls, and he was sort of saying, is it something to do with energies or psychokinesis stuff to do with teenagers that cause it, or is it something otherworldly? That for me is the most interesting part. Is if it's psychokinesis or in the mind, it's amazing what we can do with our mind, isn't it?
That has kind of, I guess, sort of become a favoured explanation or theory, if you like. But, to be honest, there is no evidence whatsoever for it. Charles Fort had a bit of fun with that idea, the old classic researcher of the unexplained, and he jocularly described a future scenario of an army going to battle, and a row of young girls are lined up in front of him, and the young girls concentrate, and then the enemy army all burst into flames.
Okay.
So that was well before Firestarter.
Yeah.
But so that idea has been around quite a long time, but it's what I would say is an exotic explanation. We've got no evidence of that which would prove that.
Yeah, I agree. Also, I think when you start adding children into the mix, people open up, people get more involved, invested in it, and more emotionally, I guess. When there's children involved, some more people take an interest. If a child is said to have been causing this or being some sort of conduit to this kind of activity, it just sounds a lot better, I guess, to some people than just some average Joe citizen that just happens to be part of it. When you add children into the mix, it's makes it a bit more edgy, I guess, a bit more interesting.
It's also easier to sympathise as well, especially with the Enfield case where it was a solo mother as well.
True.
Okay, so we've gone over those. Any other historic ones that you think are credible, or is there a couple of historic ones that you kind of agree with my view on it, that they were faked?
Can't remember. I heard about it somewhere, and then sort of did research with online newspaper archives. I think someone posted some clippings in one of the email groups I'm in, and then I did my own research. So that was the Chico, California poltergeist. So that's a small town in northern California. And this was back in 1922. But it was interesting because it literally went on for months of stones falling on a warehouse. And during the day as well, not just at night. So that was, that's a particularly good case. And you certainly couldn't say that children were playing pranks, because there weren't any. And these were quite large rocks falling down on a 2-story warehouse. But that's when the classic skeptical explanation came in at the time, was that it was someone driving around in a pickup truck firing rocks from a catapult.
Okay, all day, all night for months and months and months. It seems like you'd probably get bored with that.
Accuracy.
And you'd get bored with that, wouldn't you?
Well, you couldn't do it. No one ever saw anyone doing that. And the same explanation has been trotted out in more recent years for other rockfall poltergeist cases. It's a bit like with big cats or giant snakes. Oh, they escaped from a circus or whatever. There's a circus train wreck. It becomes a standard explanation that skeptics trot out, and there's no evidence whatsoever for it. No one in the whole history of humanity has ever been caught with a catapult in the back of a pickup truck where a poltergeist stonefall case has been going on.
So
as I said, you simply couldn't get the accuracy.
So on this Chico case and the Enfield one, so they were with particular people in particular time, and then did they just stop, or have, like, years later, has it started again? Or do these events just suddenly stop for no reason?
Well, the ones we've had here, I mean, I know there are a couple of old cases of alleged poltergeist activities which were both found to be pranksters and hoaxes. There was one in Kaiapoi, which I know from the 1800s, 1880, I think it was. That was a stone throwing one as well, which is always quite interesting. There seems to be this theme with throwing stones. And there was another one here in Auckland, the Newton ghost. He was allegedly throwing stones at people as well as they were walking down the streets, but it was found to be a guy in a sheet that would jump out at people and causing a lot of mischief. But he was throwing stones as well. So there's a lot of stone throwing going on. I'm not sure what that's about, but it seems to be some sort of common theme. Of course, there's the Humpty Doo one, which you'll know about, Peter. Humpty Doo. That was a stone throwing one as well. That was in Australia.
Yeah, I'll give a quick plug if I may. There's a really good book on Australian poltergeist cases. It's called Australian Poltergeist. It's by Tony Healy and Paul Cropper, and that's a really good book. And you'd be surprised how many cases there have been. And many of those are stones falling. But one of the odd factors with stone falls that go on, poltergeist ones, is various things. Sometimes the stones are falling inside the house from beneath the roof. Sometimes the stones are hot to the touch. Sometimes the stones seem to be falling in slow motion. Curiously, no one ever gets hurt or injured by the stones. And usually nothing ever gets broken, as though they're landing gently. And also sometimes the stones are from the local area, and other times there's nothing found anywhere near that area.
Do they stop though? Like, well, I guess what I'm trying to say is, are these events connected to people, like certain people in a certain time, or are they connected to a place? So that what I'm saying is, say for example, we had the Enfield case with that particular family. Has that stuff occurred again later on in the same place with other people, or does it appear to be just attached to certain people?
I think usually these cases start and then just stop. Occasionally they will follow people when they move house, if they're driven out of a house, and it will start happening where they've moved to before it dies off. I don't think there are cases perhaps like ghosts and hauntings where, in the 1950s it happened in one house, and then in the 1970s it starts happening again. I don't think that's ever happened, but I'm happy to be corrected if I'm wrong.
I know with the Enfield haunting, that all stopped when the family moved out. The current tenants there have had nothing happen, and I don't think anybody's had anything happen since.
So that's where someone like me starts to look at it and go, well, was it only attached to those people, or were they just faking it? You know where I'm coming from, guys. I'm not disputing it, but you do begin to wonder, well, is it attached to people or is it attached to places? But anyway, we're going to come back and talk very shortly with some of these cases that Peter's got. But before we do that, I'm going to play Dark Water here with a song called Optic Fantasy, which is probably quite appropriate for we're talking about ghosts and poltergeists. We'll be right back here on Paranormal After Dark.
Rocket 88.0 FM.
Are we the monsters?
Paranormal After Dark with the Roadie.
And we're back here on Paranormal After Dark. Now, Peter, you said to me during the week you had some Kiwi cases, and I think the Kaiapoi one that Mark mentioned was one of them. I know nothing about any of these, so do you want to enlighten us on some of these and just tell us what was going on? Because I'm quite fascinated, and then we can maybe analyse it at the end and see what we all think.
Sure. Well, look, I'll quickly whip you through. Just before I briefly mention that first Kaiapoi case, there's an interesting thing about that, but I'll just mention Chico again first. In my research, I found several towns near Chico where similar stuff had happened. Like, as I said, Chico was in 1922. So in 1878, there was a town called Helltown. Heck of a name for a town. And these are all within like 50 k's of Chico. And there's a fall of fish in Helltown. Also in Chico in 1913, so 9 years before the Poltergeist case, a large meteorite about 2 meters across was discovered and dug up.
Okay, that's interesting.
Now, a couple of years after Chico in 1924, in another town called Tudor, there's a poltergeist. And in 1975, so 50 years later, a guy reported that rocks fell out from the sky in the forest near Willows, another small town, on him and someone he was with just for a few hours as a one-off. It's just a few odd things, admittedly over many decades, but just in this cluster of small towns. The fish fall, a poltergeist, and a couple of classic rockfall cases. I'm just spitballing here. I have no, it could be...
The skeptic in me says Northern California earthquakes.
Could be complete coincidence.
Yeah.
But the Kaiapoi case in 1880, it was stones falling on a house for a few days. Of course, a long time later, in 1977, Francis Clark saw a tiger in Kaiapoi, and 4 days later, paw prints and droppings were found on a nearby beach. Again, that's a big time gap, but it's just one interest of mine is often you get unusual events occurring in the same place, even if it's a long time apart. But there are some poltergeist cases. There's one of the Australian ones, Tony and Paul mentioned in their book, and there were balls of light seen and phantom cars and a few other weird things going on at the same time. That's right, a big cat scene as well on the same property. And that was all within the space of a few months.
That Canterbury region's a bit of a hotspot, isn't it, really? It sort of has it all. There's UFO sightings, there's ghosts and hauntings, there's big out-of-place animals there. It's got a lot going for it, that area.
And I lived there for 44 years and saw none of it.
You got to get out there and look.
I was out all the time. I never saw any of it. Oh, no, I lied. I may have seen a UFO once, but again, you can't... What it was, I don't know. But yeah, interesting.
Well, look, there are quite a few New Zealand cases. Most of the ones I've got are stone falls because I've sort of searched on keywords which would pick that up. So I really need to broaden my search and see what other ones are out there. In 1901 in Clive, there was... knocking sounds in the walls of a house, and that was blamed on a child, and it also followed the family when they moved house for a short time. In 1929 in Picton, stones were falling on a property for 9 weeks.
So how long? Like during a day, like every day for hours, or just randomly every day for 9 weeks? Do you know?
It varies. It varies tremendously with these frequency and so on. But usually it's fairly consistent for a few nights or a few days, pretty much non-stop for hours at least. The most famous one, of course, in 1963 in Wellington, we had the Brooklyn Dodger. So that was named after like baseball, but that was stones falling on a lodging house for 4 nights in a row in the suburb of Brooklyn. I've been up there and had a look. It's actually been replaced by a block of flats now. Now, years later, that was blamed on 2 teenagers, but I find it really odd that the police never formally charged them if they supposedly caught these teenagers with all the damage that was caused.
And no one ever came forward to admit they were the teenagers?
No.
Okay, that's odd.
And interestingly, in 1978 in Palmerston North, a Salvation Army lodge had stones falling on it and breaking windows. So both of those were lodging places for people, which no idea if that's significant or not. So look, in 1955 in Parnell, there were stones and pieces of mortar falling, although there's no reference for that. That's just mentioned by Robin Jenkin in the New Zealand Ghost book. I haven't been able to find any newspaper articles on that so far. Takapuna in Auckland in 1966, bottles and stones falling for several nights on a house. Hamilton in 1974, a rain of bottles and glass jars on a block of flats for several nights, no one ever caught. But look, it can be a bit tricky. Occasionally people do get caught, because in Havelock North in 2016, for months off and on, just very randomly at rare intervals, stones are falling on the roof of a woman's house. She was in her 70s. But eventually 2 teenagers were caught. They've been doing it at other properties as well. They did get caught and charged. But I think by and large, a lot of these cases, if you read up on them, and so a lot of them just don't seem to be possible that they were done by people, because in most of these cases, police were out with dogs and everything for nights on end, trying to track down who was doing it. No one was ever seen or sniffed out by the tracker dogs.
Do we have any reports on what sort of stone it is? Like especially in New Zealand, say, or even in those ones in California, is it always the same type of stone, or do they look different, or is there any sort of reports of that? I'm just curious. And then also, do the stones just disappear, or
no, the stones don't disappear.
No, but has someone got them? Is are these stones still in existence somewhere?
Well, they will be, but they're just ordinary, rocks or stones, or sometimes bricks or bottles.
Yeah.
But as I said, sometimes they appear to be from a local area. Other times they're a type of stone that's not local at all, as far as we know.
That is really odd, isn't it? What do you guys make of that, Mark and Sam? I mean, it's curious to me.
I'm just sort of wondering, is there some sort of conscious entity that's throwing these things? If it is something paranormal, is it some sort of conscious entity throwing it that chooses to pick up stones and throw it? I mean, would they pick up anything else that was on hand at the time? I mean, if stones are handy, grab a handful of stones and throw those. What if it was a spanner or a hammer? Would it pick that up as well? I mean, then I think back to the time with the keys, Sam. The keys were on hand. Were the keys that were thrown, that sort of dropped from the ceiling, would that be in place of stones normally? I mean, is it the same type of entity? Were those keys just on hand and there were no stones about, so they threw the keys? So lots of questions.
It's an attention thing. One can pull, if you can believe that. But also, if you look at inside, how often are they large stones? Is it more of like a small stone that can be easily thrown by somebody, or I guess in the case of Enfield, they were larger rocks rather than pebbles or anything like that. And I think they were discovered not to have been local stones either.
So that was going to be my next question, Sam. So are we thinking from all the research and stuff that you guys have read or know of, and even other people, obviously, is it's someone or something trying to get our attention, throwing these rocks.
It's not outside of the realm of possibility. I mean, we've been on public investigations as well, where we've had guests come along with pockets full of stones, and they've tried to throw them as well, just to get attention. I mean, it does happen.
It's just curious.
It does in every case.
Just curious as to why these things are dropping. I mean, there must be a reason why whatever it is doing it. I mean, it can't just be randomly, I think I'll just drop something for the sake of it, you know? There must be a reason. Communication, perhaps, or trying to communicate, you know? I'm not sure.
Or some sort of natural process like teleportation. Charles Fort created that word, and he created it specifically to sort of cover things like fish falls and stone falls. You know, why do we not call falls of fish or frogs from the sky poltergeist events? You know, we kind of, to my point earlier, we kind of randomly have a bunch of different things: fires breaking out, rocks falling, flows of liquids from ceilings and walls and things, and a few other types. There are some poltergeist cases where there's 2 or 3 or 4 of those things all going on at once, but the majority of the cases seem to be just one type of thing happening a lot of the time. And like I say, we stuck a label on them all. I think the label was originally on noisy ghosts, literally over noises and voices and things, and bangs on the walls and so on, but somehow it's sort of spread out to cover a bunch of other weird stuff, which may or may not have the same cause at all. I don't know.
So then there's ports, things that are transported from wherever, and they drop from one realm to another, allegedly. We did one case. It was at a private house, and a guy was quite often having things just drop on his lap. He would have coins. He would be at his computer, working on his computer, and he'd feel something on his toe, and there'd be a coin sitting on his big toe. And this happened a few times. One other time he was sitting there at his computer, same place, and he heard a bang, and then he felt something between his toes, and there was a giant nail that had been driven through the floorboards, and it was in between his toes. You know, and I mean, whether his stories are true or not, I mean, we sort of took it with a grain of salt, of course, but he was quite genuine, and he was genuinely quite confused. The whole coins, he had quite a few coins that had apparently materialized on his feet while he was sitting at the computer. And he seemed like an okay guy, just pretty grounded and rational, and found that quite interesting. So that opened up my whole world with ports and the possibility of ports, and do they exist? Can they actually happen? Can they really occur? And then we have the keys happen, and you think, well, was that in the port?
And then you have to look at it and say, well, let's just say that it's another entity on the other side of this port doing this. And being that it doesn't happen in the same place all the time, you know, like we've said, sometimes it's just, is it to do with that person? Is this, I don't know, say that guy in a parallel universe trying to get his himself attention, or is it an ancestor trying to get it? I mean, that's where the curious part of it comes in, you know, because the why and the wherefores are the part that fascinates me the most, really.
I mean, if you go down that can of worms, I mean, then you've got to start asking about, you know, are these people, if it is people, are these entities trying to get attention by throwing things from one realm to another, throwing things from where they are through to our realm where we are, and we're sort of getting the tail end of it. We're getting the stones, we're getting the keys, we're getting the coins, and whatever falls through. I mean, there have been quite a few cases where things have just dropped from the ceiling, and it's been very old things, old jewelry, you know, just very old antique objects that seem to just drop out of the ceiling, out of nothing. I mean, is that the same sort of thing as poltergeists? Perhaps, you know, something to ponder on there. It's
maybe
some
it's
of these ones of rocks falling.
Yeah,
They seem to materialise just below the roof. Or they're usually hot. and seem to fall a bit slower. I mean, I don't know. I mean, look, you could argue it's the teleportation of fish falls
and portals. It opens the question of portals as well.
Could be some sort of natural process. There may not be anyone trying to get anyone's attention. To your point, Brian.
Yeah.
Or it could be the old classic, as we were talking before about telekinetic stuff to do with, mostly teenage or prepubescent girls in the house. It's interesting, with Stephen King's first novel, Carrie, on the very first page, it's a paragraph which is a newspaper report of a fall of stones on a house, which is a house Carrie and her mother live in. And that's not in the movie, but it's the very first page of the book, and that's obviously Stephen King had done his research and had read about that theory of people with telekinetic powers coming into puberty, doing things like that.
So the whole, it's very, like, when you start talking about portals, so the Star Trek fan in me says maybe it's people in the future who've discovered the portal. We haven't discovered a portal yet, right? No, well, so it's someone in the future going, let's throw some stuff in and see if it gets anyone's attention, because, you know what I'm saying? We haven't seen any physical evidence of a portal opening up in our end for us to throw anything in. But if the stuff is coming through, as you say, Mark, is it being put in there intentionally, or is it just a rock fall in another dimension that just happens to go through a portal that's a natural wormhole or something? It's the possibilities there just blow your mind, really.
There's also the idea of a trickster.
Yeah.
In the Goblin universe, F.W. Holliday, who was mainly a Nessie researcher, but went down some pretty unusual paths. So who knows if it's, I guess it sounds like there's sort of like a few main ideas, theories, telekinetic abilities. They are something to do with ghosts and hauntings, whatever ghosts are. Portals, other dimensions, some sort of natural process of teleportation, or some trickster entity.
And when we come back, I'll be asking Peter who the trickster is. But first, we're going to take a break. Here is Super Turtle, and they're going to give you a number.
Paranormal After Dark with the Roadie on Rocket FM.
They're gonna give you a number. They're gonna give you a number. You know, everybody knows they're gonna get some part of your life. You know, everybody knows they're gonna get control of your life. They're gonna give you a number. You know, everybody knows they're gonna get some part of your life. You know, everybody knows they're gonna get control of your life. Too slow, you're never gonna know your number 63705. Too slow, you're never gonna grow. They're gonna get control of your life. They're gonna get it now, right from the start. Right from the start. Right from the start. They're gonna get it now, right from the start. Right from the start. Right from the start. They're gonna get it now. They're gonna give you a number. Everybody knows they're gonna get some part of your life. You know, everybody knows they're gonna get control of your life. Too slow, you're never gonna know your number 63705. never gonna grow. They're gonna get control of your life. They're gonna get it now, right from the start. Right from the start. Right from the start. They're gonna get it now, right from the start. Right from the start. Right from the start. They're gonna get it now. They're gonna give you a number. They're gonna give you a number. They're gonna give you a number.
Paranormal After Dark with the Roadie.
So let's explore that trickster entity. Tell me about that.
I don't know if I'm the best person.
Well, someone say I don't really know too much about that. I mean, I've heard about it, but I'm curious to just. And I'm sure some listeners will be interested in tricksters too. I know a few human tricksters, but it won't be them doing this. So, tell us the story of the legend or whatever it is of the trickster.
Well, I guess the trickster's in some ways more of a concept than an individual specific legend. But something which kind of ties into it a bit is the whole thing of pixies and fairies and so forth playing tricks on people.
Right.
Back in the Middle Ages through to the 1800s. So that was I mean, look, you can go down all sorts of pathways. The Australian Poltergeist book, they point out some similarities with the booming noises and the stones falling with Yowie activity.
Oh, right, okay.
Because Tony especially was a cryptozoologist more than anything else. But usually, as I think you two would have probably found, if you're sort of researching in one area mainly, you tend to, if anything strange has happened, people come to you. Or you find other strange stuff, UFOs or cryptozoology or whatever. And some or all of the stuff may or may not be connected. Don't know.
Mm.
So you talk about these rocks falling, guys. Is this all just eyewitness accounts, or has someone captured this on film or photograph that we know of, that we think are legit? Because obviously,
I don't think so.
You don't think so? Okay, yeah. No,
I don't think it's been documented on video happening.
Right.
I can't think of any cases like that.
Mm.
It's mostly stories and anecdotal, I think, at this stage, which I realise doesn't mean anything to the skeptical scientific communities, but I don't know. I think it does. Yeah, the stories they're still valid.
I guess the fish. When Peter was talking about the fish falling from the sky and the frogs and stuff. I mean, that at least has been, I guess, verified by masses of people, because that has happened across big areas in parts of the world. So that at least has been verified as being fact. But the rock thing for me is, someone says to me, the rock's fallen from the roof. I walk in their house and there's a rock on the floor. How do I know you didn't bring that in and put it on the floor?
No, well, hang on. I'll call you out there. Being a 410 researcher and doing a lot of research on falls and things, it's exactly the same. Falls of fish and frogs, falls of stones, labelled as poltergeists. There's just as much evidence and the same kind of evidence all over the world for both. And there's no, the stock standard explanation for fish and frog falls is a water spout.
Yeah, I've heard that.
The stock standard explanation for stones is someone's catapulting them. Both explanations are rubbish.
But I've seen photos of the fish falling. I've seen photos of alleged fish falling, I should say. So, I mean, that at least has been captured. I'd be curious to see if anyone does ever find a photo.
Photos of them on the ground after they fell.
No, a photo I saw years ago. It was in a book. It was pre-internet, and it was a picture of a fish in the off the ground, allegedly falling. But where it was, I don't know. It did pique my interest, but I don't know. I've never recalled seeing it again, but it could have been
fake.
faked.
A false memory. I'm not familiar with any photo of him actually falling.
I'm having a lot of Mandela effect things lately, so it could well be that.
As I say, I think the evidence for both types of things is exactly the same. And again, as with many other things, the standard stock explanation doesn't fit the facts. If a waterspout picked up stuff from a pond or river, you wouldn't just have fish falling or just frogs. You would have bits of weed and small stones and mud and stuff as well. Also, there's been quite a few fish falls in the outback in Australia, huge distances from any source of water, and the fish have been found to be something that's not even native to any part of Australia near there. So,
okay, see, that's interesting. I mean, I never thought of that. But also, the other thing you'd have to look at is if it's a waterspout, then surely someone would report seeing a waterspout. You know,
again, that's another thing.
Yeah.
Look, even the what's the name, the Skeptoid website, even he doesn't agree with the waterspout explanation. Thinks it's a bad one. Hey, but I've got a question for the other two guys in the panel here. Like, you've obviously been active in ghost investigations and investigations of hauntings, and you mentioned the odd items that have materialized or fallen or whatever. Have you ever experienced any or investigated firsthand any other type of poltergeist type stuff in New Zealand, like spontaneous fires or flows of liquids, or banging noises and things in the walls? Any of those types of things?
Not really. The one I was talking about before, though, with the coins and the nails, that had a lot of other activity that was happening at the same time. Like, he had a tree out the front of the yard, which caught fire from the inside out, apparently, which could be lightning and whatever. But it caught fire. And he described it as burning from the inside out. He could see it glowing, and then it started burning from the inside out. Also, the whole area of land, he said that he couldn't park his car on his property because anybody that parks cars on the property, instantly the batteries get drained or actually blown up. The batteries, for some reason, just blow up. On that land. It was quite unusual. It was a very unusual case. There were UFOs and there was all sorts of other stories, and whether he was overinflating things, I don't know, but the sort of activity he was reporting was just like, it's pretty over the top.
And where was this? Where was this in New Zealand? Where was it?
It was in Auckland.
Auckland, okay.
I have to go through my files. I forget, it was South Auckland somewhere. Mangere, I think.
Okay.
Could be wrong. And he just lived there by himself, and it was just this piece of land which weird things were happening. He had power lines going over his house. He had a big giant power pylon right beside his house as well, so there's this huge EMF all around his house. Apparently there was a stream running underneath his house as well. The house was built on top of a stream, so there's underwater sort of runway. So there's all these sort of weird things that sort of tied into this bizarre sort of situation.
He sort of had everything, didn't he, the lucky bugger?
He did. It was actually too much to take in. We never went back for a second time, but I don't know why. But yeah.
It's interesting what you say about the tree and possibly lightning, because Tony Healy had told me there's quite a few witnesses to poltergeist stuff and balls of light and a few other things who have had lightning strikes on their houses or just near them. Make of that what you will.
Yeah.
It's, again, just with the sheer amount of reports of things, it could all just be coincidences, and we're just like making connections where there is none. But, it's natural to try and look for patterns.
So the other question I have for all of you, most of the cases obviously we hear about I guess, for want of a better term, in European culture type things, Enfield, America, all these things. is it these poltergeist activities that you know of? Because, as I say, I haven't researched any of this, right? Is it prevalent in other cultures, say like Hindus or Maori culture or Islanders? Do they report poltergeist activity similar to this, like the rocks and stuff, or not?
Yes.
They do, yeah.
They just don't call it poltergeist. They know that. Other countries just don't call it poltergeist.
Right. Yeah.
It's more
Also,
of a
we
European
have
thing.
a bias, and this is true of UFOs and a lot of other stuff as well. We tend to only, unless we're multilingual, we tend to only see the English language literature. And it is good. There are some researchers who translate stuff in that. I know Tony Healy's co-author, because they also did a book on Australian cryptids, Paul Cropper, he's investigated quite a few fire poltergeist cases in different countries in Asia. He's investigated those firsthand while they're actually going on. He's been able to travel and do that. It's stuff happens all over. In fact, I've got one. I'm sorry, I've talked far too much about stones falling from the sky. So this is something slightly different. And this is really anecdotal. Years ago, I used to run a small 4TM research group in Wellington, and we'd have regular meetings. And at one of those, a woman who was there who I knew, she told me something which I had no idea, but she had known about. Friends of hers who lived in South Africa in a house out completely isolated. They'd gone to bed upstairs one night, and then they heard all these crashing and bashing noises downstairs. They barricaded themselves in upstairs with guns because they thought it was one or two things. Wild animals had broken in to the house, or hooligans, robbers. So they feared for their life, whichever of those it was. They heard all the furniture, the crockery, the plates, everything being smashed to bits downstairs for hours. And then it went quiet, and they waited a few hours till daylight came, crept downstairs. House was all locked up. Not a single thing out of place or broken.
That's weird.
Once, that one night.
Yeah, that's weird, eh? It's that is a weird one, if I do say so myself. Yeah.
So that's a poltergeist.
Yeah.
It was a one-off, just one night.
So you talked earlier about the Kaipoi case where a tiger was seen, and also of course we had the Canterbury Black Panther in the 90s there as well. So are you correlating these kind of sightings of animals like that possibly to the same type of activity or entities, whatever we want to call, that could be the same thing, like the tiger's just appearing from somewhere? You know what I'm saying?
That's one idea some people have. Again, that's an exotic explanation. Yeah. And I only mention it as a huge time gap there, obviously.
Obviously, but
But it just struck me, that happened in Kaipoi. And of course, when I was rereading the Australian Poltergeist book, they mentioned the case where there was a big cat sighted on the property at the same time as all the poltergeist activity. And also, as I said, balls of light flying around the place and phantom cars appearing and disappearing on the property. So all that was happening in a period of a month or two. So I don't know.
And that's where we're at. We really don't know, but it's been a fascinating talk. Before we go though, Mark, Geff the talking mongoose. To me, this sounds like that might be poltergeist type of thing, possibly, because what we've been talking about here, where things just appear, noises just appear, voices, and then nothing. Perhaps that could be linked to the same type of activity.
Maybe.
Yeah, I mean,
we'll never really know, will we? But yeah.
Well, he's never shown up again, has he? He never showed up again, did he? So I mean, you know, fascinating. So as usual, I'm just going to say, to sign the show off, that it's always swamp gas. It's always swamp gas. Okay, that's that's the explanation I have. It's always swamp gas until Blue Book tells me otherwise. That's it. It's been a great chat, guys. we haven't really got any answers. So I have to get out there and get some video evidence or something of this, because, rocks falling from the air. Interesting. It's been a good one. We'll be back again sometime talking something else paranormal. If you're out there listening and you've got something paranormal you want to talk about, hit one of these guys up. They can put you in touch with me, or get on the Facebook page and get in touch with me, and we'll have a chat, because I just, more questions than answers. Thanks, guys.
Thank you.
And that's it for Paranormal After Dark this week with me, the Roadie. I'll see you next time. This is the Roadie signing off, and remember, it's always swamp gas.
Paranormal After Dark with the Roadie.
Are you prepared? Something's falling for you inside your head. Me creeping up now, take you over the ground. Here I am, yes I am, falling from my heart. Taking step precaution, falling behind. Understand what you say, forgets and rhyme. Taking what I can from what I feel. Saving it to leave, now gotta fail. Me creeping up now, take you over the ground. Here I am, yes I am, falling from my Can you hear me creeping up now? I've come to take you underneath the ground. I start to ask myself this: are you prepared? Something's falling for you